Hello and welcome to Press TV News Analysis. I'm Kabit Halfway. In this news analysis, we'll be looking at the mounting pressure exerted on Israel in the wake of its deadly attack on the Gaza Aid Flotilla, which has drawn international condemnation with a special focus on U.S.'s relation with what they have called the right arm in the Middle East. First, the result of the autopsy done on the bodies of the 9 Turkish men on board the Mavi Marmara. Well, they were telling. They were shot a total of 30 times, with 5 killed by gunshot wounds to the head. This information about the manner and intensity of the killings undermines Israel's insistence that its soldiers opened fire only in self-defense. Yet Israel is reluctant for an international investigation to take place, even though one of the activists murdered was an American citizen shot at close range with 4 bullets in his head and 1 in his chest. Well, the murder of American Rachel Corrie, an American activist who was crushed to death by Israeli forces in 2003, and more recently an American activist who lost her eye from a tear gas canister shot in the face by Israeli forces in the occupied territories of Palestine, other examples in which the U.S. has not held Israel accountable. But for how long can the U.S. sustain its relationship with Israel in this manner? Former CIA analyst Ray McGovern, who is Israeli Defense Minister Ehud Barak, he has said, wait another 2 or 3 weeks and everyone will forget the incident, that is, the attack, and the pressure on us will dissipate.
There was no investigation, much less a credible and transparent investigation, of what happened exactly 43 years ago on June 8, 1967, when the Israeli Air Force and Navy attacked and tried very much to sink the USS Liberty in international waters. 34 U.S. sailors were killed, 170 plus were badly wounded. I have just come from a ceremony in Arlington Cemetery where there is a mass grave of many of those 34 who were killed. Now, they were never held accountable for that. They did not conduct by themselves or with anyone else a transparent, much less a credible investigation. And the same thing happened in March of 2003, 3 days before the attack on Iraq by U.S. and British forces. That was no coincidence. When the Israeli bulldozer built in Peoria, Illinois, deliberately ran over Rachel Corrie and then backed over her to make sure that her back was broken, that was 3 days before the Israelis knew that the headlines of the newspapers would be dominated by the attack on Iraq. It was the immediate purpose was to serve notice on international volunteers who were trying to prevent housing demolitions in Gaza, serve notice on them that they were no longer immune, that they would suffer the same fate as their Israeli young volunteer compatriots. That was a lesson that they tried to give, and Rachel Corrie and her parents have been trying desperately ever since 2003 to get a fair, transparent, credible investigation to no purpose. The Israeli Air Force and Navy, the Navy had torpedoed the boat. It was listing badly. It looks like it was going down. Lifeboats were let down from the side of the ship, but they were machine gunned by the Israeli torpedo boats. And a young seaman named Terry Halbardier asked his commander, could he kind of squish across the napalm-filled deck and try to connect 2 coaxial cables so that he could get an SOS signal out? He said yes. Terry did that with some baling wire and some other stuff, and an SOS went out. And at a time when Israeli black-clad commandos were ready to descend onto the USS Liberty, just like you watched them descend upon the Marmara, the Israelis intercepted that message and said, uh-oh, looks like the 6th Fleet will probably send airplanes to do battle with us. We better get out of town. And they immediately dispersed. Now, what happened to that message was the 6th Fleet received it. The commander of the Saratoga aircraft carrier sent 2 planes immediately to do battle with whoever was attacking a U.S. ship. And it was called back by President Lyndon Johnson, who said, we don't want to cause any problems for our friends in Israel. That's how bad it was, and to this day, 99.9% of the Americans know nothing about the 34 seamen killed on the Liberty and the 170 wounded, because our Zionist media have kept that out of the public domain.
Let me bring in Ray McGovern and ask him, I mean, why is it that the U.S. is not holding Israel responsible? I mean, is it a case where they don't care about their U.S. Nationals and citizens? In this case in point, one who was shot at and killed by Israeli forces?
That's a very good question, but all we need to do is look back to 1967, when the President of the United States said in as many words, I don't care how many U.S. naval seamen are killed, I don't care if the ship goes down, I don't want to embarrass my Israeli ally. Similarly, with the case of Rachel Corrie, she was deliberately killed and the U.S. did nothing, and now, of course, one of the people killed on the Marmara was a U.S. citizen. So, it used to be in the old times, Civus Romanus sum. I'm a Roman citizen. That used to count for something in the world. That got St. Paul a hearing in Rome. Now, Civus Americanus sum means nothing, and Israel knows that. I'd like to raise one point that hasn't been mentioned. This is a very serious affair, different in kind from the others, because a major U.S. ally has been involved in an act of war. Now, I'll bet you were thinking I was going to say Israel. Turkey. Turkey is a major U.S. ally bound by the NATO Accords, a treaty approved by our Congress. There is no treaty. There is no mutual defense treaty between the United States of America and Israel. That is frightfully important, especially since most Americans have been given to believe that we do have a mutual defense obligation to Israel. In the 70s, after the Arabs did attack Israel in 73, we offered such a treaty to the Israelis. And you know what they said? Well, thanks, but no thanks. And do you know why? Because international treaties require internationally recognized borders. And the Israelis wanted no part about talking about borders after they had extended their borders by virtue of war in 1967. And the other thing is that mutual defense treaties incur an obligation on both parties to let the other know before they're about to flail out and attack another country. And Israel didn't want to have to come to Washington and say, oh, by the way, we're going to attack Lebanon next week, or we're going to attack Gaza the following week, or we're going to raid Syria. They didn't want any part of that. So the reason that Israel is not bound to the United States by a mutual defense agreement is by their own wish not to be bound by those clauses. Turkey, on the other hand, Turkey is in a state technically, it's in a state of war with Israel because Israel has attacked Turkish territory. The Turks are involved this time. That's what makes it different. Erdogan is fit to be tied. One of the reports says he's thinking of coming with the next flotilla. This is not going to end because no matter how much love there is for Israel on the part of the United States government, there are other people involved now, including a United States ally. As they looked at what was about to happen to Iran, and that's very serious because these sanctions were just the first step. Netanyahu and company wanted very much to mount a military offensive against Iran. Erdogan got together with De Silva of Brazil and said, let's stop this. Let's stop another Iraq. And they did. And they were encouraged to do that by the President of the United States, who sent them personal letters asking them to do that, as creating more credibility, more confidence, okay? And guess what happened? The President of the United States got suborned here by Hillary Clinton and the neocons, and while he was busy with the Gulf of Mexico, they were busy with the Persian Gulf, and vetoed what the President had asked the President of Brazil and the Prime Minister of Turkey to do. So Erdogan was already fit to be tied when he decided to sponsor these ships, and when he saw how the Israelis treated them, he's not going to stop now. He's not got a big Israel lobby in Turkey. There is going to be some action on Erdogan's part. And I remind you, Erdogan is an ally of the United States. Israel is not. Well, I'm deeply concerned at the erratic behavior of the Israeli government. We talk about siege. Well, there's another application for siege, and that's a siege mentality, and that's what reigns in Tel Aviv at present. I'm very afraid, for example, if the Iranian Revolutionary Guards try to accompany one of these flotillas into Gaza, I'm very afraid that the Israelis will use that as a pretext to start a war against Iran.